Here's a little bit about the value of energy. Dealing with climate and energy is hard because energy use is so valuable to us. And right now, most of our energy is from fossil fuels. Here's a little bit of history and what's going on. A human diet, what we get from our food that allows us to do things, to run and jump and hoe and what have you, we eat about 2,000 calories per day. If you burned your food over 24 hours, the energy coming off is just 100 watts. It's one old light bulb. A Tour de France rider can do a few hundred watts, but they're eating 10,000 calories a day. What we can do is not that much. What is done for us, though? We don't have to light our light bulbs. We don't have to cool and heat our rooms by generating the energy from our food. We have air conditioners, and we have tractors and trucks and all of this wonderful stuff that's done for us. In the United States, what is done for us from outside is 100 times more than what we could do for ourselves. Averaged over the world, it's about 25 times. We really love this. Our well-being depends on it. And it is still more than 80% fossil fuels in the U.S. and in the world. That's why this is hard. You can tell the history of humanity from so many different ways, and from the common workers and from the leaders, from our art, from our religion. You could tell the history from our use of energy. Ever since the discovery, the control of fire, we have this long history of energy crises. We find something to burn to get energy from, to do our work for us. We burn through it much faster than nature makes more. We suffer very large unintended consequences. We get sick and other sorts of things. Then it becomes scarce. We have intrusive governments. We may fight wars over it. And then we find something new to burn, and we do it over again. And here's the history from Penn State's view. If you drive into State College from the east, headed towards Penn State University, you go past the reason that Penn State is there, because Penn State was founded by the Iron Masters up the hill from the iron furnace. And the furnace was put here because there was red dirt that you could get iron out of, there was limestone flux, there were trees for charcoal, and there was a stream, a spring, a water source that could drive the water wheel that supplied the blast to make the furnace hotter. This tremendous picture is early on when Penn State had been founded, which has students in civil engineering in their ties and their hats gauging the outflow of the spring. That is why the furnace was put right where it is, to learn how to do this important task before they became engineers. We go back to the furnace. When the furnace was operating, it would have looked like this. This one is Hopewell Furnace down towards Philadelphia, and it is turning that red dirt into the iron that was used to build the east. The water wheel is over here that would have been driven by our spring, and it's burning. And to do the burning, you've got to be dumping in things to burn. And what was it burning? Charcoal. Near here, we have something called Collier Lake. Colliers, or the Colliers, were the people that turned trees into charcoal because charcoal was just able to burn hot enough to smelt the iron, whereas the trees were not. They'd make this giant pile of logs. Then they'd cover it with dirt. This is actually a demonstration. These people did this job when they were young, and they were now showing, in their old age, they were showing a photographer how they used to do it. You bury the trees in dirt, you burn them with reduced oxygen, drive off the water and some other things. Hope that the dirt doesn't break, so someone has to climb up there and fix it and try not to fall in and die. And eventually it makes the charcoal that allows you to smelt the iron. And it did this. An iron furnace, and the people who took care of it, think about a square mile of trees per year to make it go. If you had an open forest and you could walk for 20 minutes and then turn and walk 20 minutes and then come back, that would be enough trees for 1 year. And then it's maybe 50 years until enough trees would grow back that you could do it again. You need this huge quantity of trees. Now, if you go to a map of Pennsylvania today and ask, where is Furnace still on the map? Every line on your left here is a furnace that we still remember, and there are many more furnaces that are back in the woods that we've forgotten on this map. And every one of those, when it's running, is a square mile of trees per year. They made something called pig iron that then was shipped to forges like Valley Forge, where you made valuable things from the pig iron. Every one of these on the right is a forge, another square mile of trees. And trees are being used by people who are not making iron to make their houses and to heat and to cook and so on. And what happened? This. Pennsylvania means Penn's Woods. They said when the first European settlers arrived in Pennsylvania, a squirrel could have gone up a tree on the Atlantic coast and stayed in trees all the way across to the Mississippi. The first forester of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was someone named Rothrock, and around 1900 he wrote about the Great Pennsylvania Desert. Now, it wasn't a desert, we still had rain, but we didn't have trees. We had cut them all down. We now have 1 million deer in Pennsylvania. There might have been a few left. We re-imported elk because we got rid of them. We got rid of the bears. We got rid of the Nittany lions. There wasn't a deer to eat, and there wasn't a tree to do it behind. We used groundhogs for Groundhog Day. We couldn't use bears or something else large because we got rid of them. It was not just us. If you know Cape Cod, so Cape Cod sort of sticks up there off the coast. And right about here on Cape Cod is where the Pilgrims first met the native people in Eastham. They said it was so goodly a land and wooded to the brink of the sea. Still in the 1600s, the town of Eastham outlawed the ability of people to cut their own trees on their own property. There weren't any left. Deforestation was so extreme that they panicked. They didn't know what to do. Thoreau walks the Cape in the 1800s, and he wrote, many of the people get all of their fuel from the beach. If there is a shipwreck, you can burn it. If a tree drifts over from Maine, you can burn that. Otherwise, you can't cook dinner. Over in Manhattan, still in the 1600s, the Common Council is passing many laws on rights to wood, fair trade in wood. They're paying inspectors to make sure you're getting what you paid for. If you don't like government, you better not get into scarcity, because we demand governments to help us at that time when we have shortages, and we hit energy shortages very early. Now, if you've ever tried to read by firelight in a dark Pennsylvania winter before electric lights are invented, it's not very easy. You're not going to do 12 stitches to the inch on your quilt in that flickering light of a candle or a fire. So what did you do? Poor people burned a biofuel, a mixture of alcohol and turpentine. It was fairly cheap. It was good light, but it was explosive. And there's horrible stories. The Methodist minister and his wife go out to visit the parishioners, and the daughters try to refill the lamp, and it blows up and burns them to death. And so rich people burned whales. The whale oil was clean, and it was bright, and you didn't have it exploding. So you take large quantities of money, you ship it to New England, and they put sailors on ships, and they go out and kill whales. This is the history of whale oil production from the Yankee fleet from 1800 to 1880. And at the peak, there are 10,000 sailors out of New England trying to kill whales. This is a complicated story. The fleet got crushed in the sea ice off of Alaska. The insurance went through the roof, and that could shut down some whaling. But what were they doing in the sea ice off of Alaska? They couldn't find any whales that they could kill closer. They had basically killed all the whales they could find. There were some whales that were too fast for these sailing ships, and various other people from Japan and from Norway and Russia and what have you killed them with diesel and harpoon cannons. When we finally quit whaling, there was no economic resource of whales left. We had killed so many whales that there just wasn't much left in the ocean. As they got good at whaling, they drove the price down. That low spot there was about $7 a gallon in modern equivalent. And when they hit the peak of whale oil, not when it was totally gone, but when they hit the peak, it's up to about $25 a gallon. Just this huge, huge price increase. Not when it's gone, but when it was half gone. If you took 100 years of Yankee whaling, all of that oil, 10,000 sailors at the peak, you put it into modern tankers and you replace the petroleum we're using, it would last the United States 11 hours. The idea that we go back when we run out of oil and do the things we used to do is laughably absurd. We cannot do that. We need something better. But we do have trees and we have whales because we switched to burning fossil trees and fossil algae. This is not a new idea. This is a editorial cartoon. It was published in the magazine Vanity Fair in the year 1861, just before the U.S. Civil War. And you can see the title. It was the grand ball given by the whales in honor of the discovery of the oil wells in Pennsylvania. So just before the U.S. Civil War, the oil wells of our native land, may they never secede. Oil's well that ends well. We wail no more for our blubber. We saved whales with mineral oil, with petroleum. This is a piece of sheet music from the year 1864. It's the American Petroleum Polka. We're going to dance to oil wells. It says at one point, this oil well threw pure oil 100 feet high. So there comes the oil. Oil was always black. It is black. It will always be black. But with her wearing her white top here, they didn't want black oil falling on it, so they made it white. When we quit burning so many of them, a lot of the trees and a lot of the whales grew back in 100 years. When we quit burning fossil fuels, nature will make more in maybe 100 million years. The rate of formation is so close to zero that you can just set it to zero. We must change. We cannot decide between, say, renewables and fossil fuels. Either we burn and then we learn, or we learn while we burn. And we are confident if we burn before we learn, we will change climate in ways that we really don't like.